Are you feeling overwhelmed and uncertain about how to scale your business sustainably? Do you have big dreams for your business, but you're struggling to turn them into reality? Or maybe you're just tired of sacrificing your health, your well being, time with your family, and your own self care, all in the pursuit of success. Not only is this not sustainable, but it can lead to increased stress and decreased productivity in the long run. Don't let the chaos of running a business hold you back any longer. Join our 12-month Real Women, Real Business Mastery program and start building the business of your dream with clarity and confidence. If you're ready to achieve six-figure plus revenue growth, rediscover your passion for your business, and say goodbye to overwork, then let's chat. Book a free business planning session at aboutshaunaLynn.com/plan. Check out the link in the show notes. Hello and welcome to the Real Women, Real Business podcast. I am your host, Shauna Lynn Simon, and today I am joined by an absolute rock star in the biogas field. This is Deanna Martin, and Deanna Martin has been in biogas for a number of years. If you're not familiar with what the heck biogas is, don't worry about it. We're going to share all that with you here. But Deanna actually recently started her own business. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the different challenges that she's navigated through building this new business and throughout her career in biogas. Because, of course, as you may probably assume, it's predominantly men that are working in this industry. And so she is a powerful woman who's come on here to share her story. So, Deanna, welcome.
Thank you, Shauna. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so let's start off with, how did you get into biogas? Did you wake up one day and like, man, you know what I'd love to do with my life? I'd love to work in waste. Like how exactly did this come about?
Yeah, so it was really a situation of opportunity knocked, and so I would be a testament to that. It was one of these facilities was being built in a town very close to me, and I kind of caught wind of it and said I need to be involved in that, and just really started to just navigate my life around getting involved with that facility. So I was actually pretty ambitious at the time. I got involved with the construction crew putting it up so that I could
Oh,
learn it
wow.
from the ground up. Absolutely. Understand the facility and understand all the components as they were going in. I've always been mechanically minded, so I didn't mind that kind of work, and I really cherished the opportunity to learn it from the ground floor. And then it sort of segued into operating the facility, which segued into plant management, which then segued into managing special capital projects and large capital investments in the industry. So it really was just kind of a natural progression of opportunity and capitalizing on said opportunity, putting yourself in the right place at the right time.
Incredible. And so tell us a little bit about, what is your background going into this? What was your understanding, your knowledge? You mentioned that you were always a bit mechanically inclined, but
Yeah.
what was your actual background?
So my background was actually in IT. So it was
Okay.
very much a programming and a computers background, which had some transferable skills. It's a heavily automated environment, so
Yeah.
brought a really good skill set for that. But ultimately, the time that I was getting into this industry, there really wasn't anybody doing it. There were no courses in school to take for it. The only education you could get, you had to fly over to Europe. So really it was, I needed to learn by doing. So I
Okay.
had to get my hands dirty and I had to learn the science behind it out of necessity. I
Oh,
mean, that's
wow.
the famous saying, necessity breeds innovation. So I definitely had to put myself out there and put myself in plenty of uncomfortable situations to just like gather the skill set that I've got at this stage of the game.
And how did you go about this? Because I'm gathering that this was pre-YouTube days, that there wasn't
Oh
just a
yeah.
handy little YouTube video telling you all you need to know about biogas, was there?
Yeah, and unfortunately, like it's a niche enough industry that still doesn't really exist.
Sure.
I mean, maybe there's an opportunity to start a YouTube channel, Biogas for Dummies, but no, really, what it came down to was just having to rely on experience in operations and experience in electrical and learning to trust and finding good knowledge partners and being able
Mm,
to aggregate all those partners to form a team that could support me. Because at the end of the day, there was no person in the industry that had the experience that you could just draw on. You needed to find the right person for the right problem. And that's an area that I tend to excel in, is just problem solving and gathering the right knowledge to address problems as they come up, especially really complex ones.
You bring up an interesting point there because I think that's pretty huge to find knowledge people. And I think in today's era of there, I can just get on my phone and do a quick YouTube search, or like, you're watching TV, you're like, oh, what's that person from? I remember them being on another show. And instead of racking your brain or asking the people around you, you just we immediately go to this device in our hands. And it's something that's become almost a little bit of a lost art, is finding those people and being able to soak up what they've got to offer, because no matter how many articles you find or YouTube videos you find, there's something to be gained from having those intimate conversations. And there's things that, like, I might write an article and I'm going to forget 16 different items in it, that if I'm having a conversation with someone a bit more naturally, those things are going to come up. I'm going to demonstrate them in a different way. So in a sense, I think you actually have an advantage that you were able to tap into those partners, but finding them is probably one of the biggest challenges, I would imagine.
Absolutely. To your point, um, a YouTube video doesn't allow you to really ask questions, right? So, I mean, you see this all the time in my industry, is people go to a training course, and there's some offered at this point here in North
Sure.
America as well, and people will go and it's a week-long course, and they come back and they think they're just the penultimate in the industry. They know everything there is to know. And I just kind of chuckle and laugh and go, okay, go run the plant and see how that goes for you, right? Because ultimately they'll be back and they'll be asking me questions, because experience matters. So learning to
Right.
value experience and doesn't even necessarily need to be in your industry, but just people in adjacent fields that have operational experience or mechanical
Absolutely.
experience or programmatic experience, being able to have almost a mentor that you can just reach out whenever you need to and bounce ideas off of. That's when the best innovation happens, is when you take experience and you take, a problem and you start to combine those elements, and those people are going to be the ones that come up with innovative solutions. You won't always find an innovative solution on YouTube because, right,
It's
they're
all
just
been
giving you the
done.
standardized answer.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was first starting out in the corporate world, I worked for a company. It was a fairly small company, and the founder of the company was the CEO of the company at the time, and I was hired to report directly to him. And I will say he was an absolute bear of a man. There were bets on how long I was going to last for, because he was an entrepreneur. But I think I took to him immediately because I just was so in awe of just how his brain worked. I could see that there was just always these wheels turning. He just always saw things from different angles, different perspectives, just very innovative. People skills was not his strength necessarily, but we found a way to really connect. And I just remember I just wanted to learn everything that I could from him. He was such an incredible mentor. And unfortunately, he got ill not long after I started working for him, and ended up actually passing away from cancer.
Oh
Uh,
no.
but but when I started my business, I thought back to him often and thought, what would he have done? What would he have been like? He would have been my number one fan, and I would have loved to be able to just soak up even more knowledge. But I soaked up as much as I could in that short time that I had with him. And I didn't know at that time that I was going to start my own business. But I just knew that this guy was just a wealth of knowledge. If I asked the right questions, he was just so willing to share it. So I love what you're saying about finding those mentors. These are people that they've had these experiences, and they thrive on being able to share those experiences. They want to share that knowledge. They just want someone to be eager enough to tap into it. So when you can take advantage of that, it's incredible the things that you can learn. So anyone who says, well, I don't have this particular training, or I don't have this schooling, or I don't have this knowledge, to your point, go out and get it. Go find it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to your point, I mean, first of all, I'm sorry that you lost your friend and coworker, but the gift that those types of people give us is a new lens to look at problems through, right?
Yeah.
What you said there was super important, is how would this person approach that problem? That means that you've studied that person and their behavior long enough to understand a bit of the way that they approach problems. And every time you learn that with a new person, you just add a new tool to your tool belt, a
Yeah.
new way to approach problems, a new way to come up with creative, innovative solutions.
Absolutely. And I mean, we're talking about this in the context of a mentor, but I often say to people as well, take a look at the people that you hire because you're bringing them on for the knowledge that they have. And so tap into that. If you are constantly just telling them, here's how I want you to do everything without being open to their ideas, I mean, it's amazing the things that they can come up with. And I'm sure that's probably something that you've experienced as
Oh,
you've worked in all the ranks basically that you could possibly work in. So I want to get to though, you have more recently started your own business. And actually, you know what, before we even get to that, hold on, let's backtrack for a second. There's probably a few people listening to this that are saying, what the heck is biogas? Can we take a moment in the
absolutely.
simplest terms possible? Not that I'm assuming that people won't understand, but how would you describe biogas and what you do?
Okay, excellent. So biogas is essentially a hybrid industrial biological process. So what you can do is you can take organic waste, and that encompasses just about any kind of organic waste, put it through this process, and it will decompose in a controlled environment. And then you can collect the gas that is produced by it. That gas is something called biogas, which is comprised of two main components. It's about 60% methane, 40% CO2. You can do a few things with that biogas. It's a perfectly combustible gas, so you can run it through a reciprocating engine and produce renewable electricity. Or
Okay.
you can upgrade the gas and put it into the natural gas line because it's a direct analog to natural gas.
Oh,
So essentially, you
interesting.
would be offsetting carbonaceous fuels with the output. What's left over is something that we call digestate, which is a fertilizer that you can then apply to field, and it carries some advantages over your traditional chemical fertilizers. One, you don't have to use a bunch of fossil fuels to produce it. Two, it carries active biology, so you can replenish the
Yeah.
life in the soil. And three, it's basic by nature, so pH 7 or higher, which means that it prevents soil acidification, which is a growing problem that I'm sure you've heard in the news
Mhm.
more and more frequently as we talk about sustainable agricultural practices.
Right.
So what I see it, the niche I see it filling in the marketplace is it's very much a um, call it a circular economy. We're making sure that our nutrients don't end up in landfills, that they end up back on the soil. We're making sure that our energy is being produced via photosynthesis in the sun as opposed to pulling up carbon from the ground. Um, and eventually there's even so many more possibilities that you can utilize this technology for.
Incredible.
Specifically, the plant that I was running was based around food waste. So it would take material that was collected by municipalities, decontaminate it through a mechanical process sorting process, and use that as the primary input for the process. So green bin waste to power.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think most people, when they think of green bin waste, of course, they're thinking compost. Like that's just the natural, like, oh,
Yeah,
this is just compost. And I can recall when our city first started the green bin program, and you could go to the local landfill and collect your compost and use it in your garden and everything else. But it's evolved so significantly since then that, yeah, there's a lot of additional uses for it. And it sounds as though like this is something that um, sounds like it should be the future of sustainability
yeah,
because it's essentially you're taking it's like taking an apple and using every single part of it and ensuring that not a single part of it gets wasted. It's about taking something and just and dissecting it in a way that leaves nothing left that's harmful for the environment
exactly.
essentially.
100 years ago, we were going through something called an industrial revolution. I
Yeah,
believe
yeah.
that we're on the precipice of experiencing what I call a circular revolution, where we've reached a point where we need to start moving away from extraction-based economies and start moving towards looking at waste streams as resources rather than waste. There should be no waste in our society because we need to achieve a better balance with this beautiful planet that we live on.
Yeah. Oh, that's a, being so involved in the field, I would imagine that that comes into your everyday life and just allows you to see things through a different lens that other people might not see and allow you to, seek out opportunities and identify opportunities where someone else might just see waste. You're seeing there's an opportunity here to be better, to do better, and to improve the world, essentially.
That's the fun of working in a very, very niche industry is, yeah, you really do get to be a pioneer in a lot of cases. You get to look at emerging technologies, you get to come up with cool new concepts and cool new ways to use the resources that everybody just seems to take for granted. So it's a super engaging space that I love working in. And, going back to talking about how do you gain the skills in a niche industry like that? For me, it was always derived from I'm passionate about it. I'm
Right.
passionate about what this technology can do. I'm passionate about this planet and trying to leave a better world behind for future generations. And that passion then translates into the motivation required to collect all those skills, right?
For sure. And I mean, most of the people listening to this podcast are passion-driven entrepreneurs. And so, I mean, and you are now amongst the passion-driven entrepreneurs. So you worked for other people for some time, but more recently, you've branched out onto your own. So tell us a little bit about what that journey's been like.
Yeah, so over the course of my time with my previous organization, like I said, I did everything from basic operations all the way up to acquisitions and capital investments. And, just got to a point where I sort of looked at the marketplace and I said, there's not that many of me out there. There's not many people who have kind of the depth and breadth of experience that I've got at this stage of the game. And this industry needs more, uh, call it movers and shakers. And I
Sure.
said, you know what? The time is right for me to take that step and to make the leap and just try and bring this knowledge that I've got into the marketplace because, again, I really do believe that this is an important piece in the climate puzzle. So I'm just going to do everything in my power to make sure that I'm helping to facilitate everybody building more of these things because I really do view the biogas industry as a whole as almost one force against larger competitive forces. So whatever I can do to try and facilitate success within my industry, I'm going to do it.
That's fantastic. And I mean, I would imagine like there's so many more opportunities that are now open to you by being able to be more of an independent party, to be able to join different companies together and different initiatives together. And it's interesting. You've been navigating this whole space. I would imagine, and we touched on this very early on when I introduced you, that I would imagine there's very few women in this space. But it sounds like you've mentioned, in our pre-interview, you were telling me that you've actually connected with some fantastic women in the space. What would you say is the percentage of men versus women in the space? Do you have any idea of what that looks like?
I actually have a pretty interesting sample size that I experienced recently. So I was over at the World Biogas Association and there was an awards gala. So this was the industry awards internationally to see.
Which,
Um,
just to interrupt you for one quick moment, were you
yeah,
nominated for an award by chance?
I was nominated for Women in Biogas and I got highly commended.
Congratulations.
So runner up, I didn't get the award, but I guess that just means I got to keep working if I want a
It's an
trophy,
honor to be
but
nominated, truly. I mean, like that's
it surely
it's a pretty
was.
spectacular
Exactly.
stage to be able to be on in the
No,
first
that
place. So good
that
for
truly
you.
was a high commendation, especially when you consider that this was the international
Yeah.
um, um, trade agency. So, I got exposure overseas. I got exposure in the East where there's emerging markets in this space. So I was really excited and really honored to be a part of that. But to your question,
Sorry. Yes.
there's people at this gala um, representing what I would call the top people in this industry. And of those 150 people, maybe 10 or 15 were women.
So that's about a 10% if we're being
About
generous. Yeah.
about
Okay.
that. And I would say that's across the board. Having said that, in my time, I mean, I've hired women in this space because I really do believe that women bring something special to this industry. And that's just the way they approach businesses, where they seek harmony and balance. And you really see that in the culture that they establish.
Hmm.
So I've always said the best plant managers for these facilities are women.
Interesting. I mean, I would imagine it's not the easiest thing to find those women, and the qualified women at that, of course, but
No, exactly.
good for you for making every effort to do exactly that.
Some of
Um,
that's very cultural too. Women are taught, you don't work with tools, don't work in the mechanical fields. They're male dominated spaces. You won't like it. And to a degree, that can be true. There can be
mhm.
some pushback in these industries. Um, there's sort of this expectation that women won't be able to do the work. Having said that, I've seen plenty of big, strong guys throw their backs completely out trying to do something silly, and then a girl walk up and understand, simple
Physics.
machines and how to use physics and leverage, and all of a sudden they get it done, right? So don't let that dissuade you. I would so encourage, I mean, I want to be one of the biggest advocates for more women in trades, more women
Of
in
course.
mechanical spaces, because I really do think they bring something special to it.
Do you find that you've been underestimated in this field as a woman?
Absolutely. Not to toot my own horn too much, but at this point, I'm one of the more experienced people in this industry by a pretty wide margin, just because this facility that I started with was one of the first in North America. And then there was kind of a big pause in the industry while there was some regulatory things going on. So I was in early, and then there was a gap, and now you've got a new kind of like wave of people coming into the industry. And
Right.
I've stood, in meetings, sitting in the yard talking about a project essentially. And there would be people that were reporting to me on my team standing beside me that were men, and then a team on the other side that were men. And, the men talk to the men. And I'm sitting here going, okay, but like I'm the expert here. Do you want to talk to me instead? And
Yeah.
and I've also experienced some pretty funny things about guys just almost patronizing me. I've had
Mhm.
a guy explain how pumps work and fluid dynamics, and I like to just kind of play coy. I just ask questions
Sure.
until I just
Until
increase
you
the level
stump
of
him.
complexity of the questions until I start filling in the blanks for them. And then they realize that maybe, okay, they need to respect the knowledge that I've got.
Yeah.
But I would say largely in the industry, it hasn't been a prohibitive barrier.
Good.
You certainly do, hit some setbacks as far as that's concerned. But at the end of the day, what I've always strived to do is just find good people to work with, people that respect my knowledge, people that respect me as a person, right? And,
Right.
gender should not even come into it as far as I'm concerned. Can we get this done? Do we have the skills that we need to get this project done? Cool, let's do this, right?
In some of those situations that you have experienced it, what's your best way through it? Do you just sort of ignore it and step over it and just show them how amazing you are? Or, do you have to call them out on it? Like, do you have any sort of
Um,
tips as to like, what's the, for a woman who's listening to this, who's trying to break into, like maybe they're starting their own business in sort of a man's world, I think that there's extra barriers that are up sometimes when you're starting your own business. Like I know, local carpenters that are female and they've hit walls at times of, trying to, we talk about getting your seat at the table, we think about it in corporate terms, but there's so many tradeswomen that are just, sure, they might be able to get hired by someone, but it's a whole different ballgame when they're starting their own business as well. What sort of advice would you have for that?
Absolutely. So I would say one of the more important things is find partners in the industry and people that will advocate for you that are the good ones. Look for the good people that respect you and know your skills and will advocate for you.
Yeah.
That's going to allow you then to find customers that are of similar minds. Um, because yeah, ultimately, I've seen it time and again. People waste so much time with people that just clearly don't respect them. So know your worth, know your value, and respect yourself and your own time, and don't invest that time in people that don't respect you. And then beyond that, you know, um, I yeah, it really is frustrating, but yeah, you just got to know when to pull the plug when it's good money chasing bad, essentially, right?
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't respect you and you have done everything in your power to show them that you've got the skills and that you're fully capable of the task, know when to pull the plug and don't let the sunk cost fallacy catch up to you.
Right.
And then, yeah,
It's
it,
interesting too, because I mean, like you're in this field that's predominantly dominated by men. Um, I come from my background. My first business, of course, was a home staging business, and so I work with a lot of women in home staging, and it is predominantly a female dominated industry. And in fact, have a whole lot of respect for the men that are in the industry because they actually have some barriers almost because the expectation is that like, oh, this is a woman's quote
yeah,
unquote
it's
woman's
almost
job.
inverse, right? Yeah.
Right. And at the same time, I had an all-female team of stagers, and we'd always enjoy when we pull up in our 26-foot truck and there's a woman who's driving the truck and there's women unloading the truck. And, this home staging has this sort of image of being essentially pillow fluffers. Like all we're doing is walking around fluffing pillows and making some beds and such. And I mean, it is hard labor, let me tell you. We
Yeah,
are
it is.
we are physically moving things on a regular basis. Like, yeah, we got to have this creative eye, we got to have this design, we've got to be, sometimes we're the marriage counselor and the divorce attorney and the babysitter for the dog, the cat, the children at the consultations. I mean, there's so many different hats that we wear, and we have to be kind and compassionate, but then we have to be strong businesswomen as well to get paid our worth, because we're constantly dealing with these hard negotiating personalities.
Mhm.
Most often men, though there's definitely a lot more women in real estate as well, but a lot of times they're men, and they're trying to talk you down on your price and tell you that you're worth less and your contract doesn't make sense and I want to make changes to your contract. And it's interesting because if the roles were reversed and we were trying to do that the other way around, I mean, it wouldn't fly. So it's interesting just the different things. So I mean, again, I think I'm always find it interesting how different women navigate different industries and the different things that you're up against. But to your point, there's some really good ones out there. Find them, know your worth,
Yeah.
and get rid of the ones that aren't going to respect you.
There's
Yeah.
almost like this weird expectation out there that women just need to perform that much better than men to prove to them that they're worthy,
Yeah.
so to speak, right? And I mean, that's just a bunch of hogwash. It's nonsense, right? Women are just as effective as men, more effective in some cases, right? And the fact that women almost are taught culturally that they need to feel like they need to be perfect,
Mhm.
that's one of the most frustrating things. And that's definitely a barrier that's out there, right? Is be perfect. You need to just do so much better than the men, or else that sort of like baked in assumption that men have will just get validated, right?
Right.
So try not to let that weigh you down, that expectation that like, you're allowed to make mistakes too. You're a human,
Sure.
right? Any human's going to make mistakes. So a lot of it too is know your own worth,
Right. But it's
right?
also even just the
Understand.
whole, like, they often say the best revenge is living well. They say this often when you break up with
Yeah,
someone, of course, but the same definitely goes in business as well. Of, just show them your expertise. We shouldn't have to tell them that we're experts. Let's
exactly.
just show them. And if they don't
Yeah,
want to see it, that's their loss.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, at this stage of the game of my career, I make basically zero effort to impress somebody. I do
Good
it
for
with the
you.
quality of my work. I do it with the projects that I put together. I do it with the innovative designs that I come up with. And that speaks for itself. And if people can't read that message, then they're not somebody I want to work with anyway,
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I love
right?
that. All right. So listen, if we could take kind of a summary of the things that we talked about today, like
Yeah.
what's one thing that you want to leave for the audience today? If they get one thing out of today's episode, what would you like to leave them with?
I mean, for me, I'd love to see more women in mechanical spaces. I just can't encourage women enough to take a chance on it. Don't be afraid. You might
Yeah.
actually enjoy that kind of work, right? Just because there's so much cultural dissuasion for getting into those fields. I really want to just be an example of, yes, you absolutely can, and you can excel. And in fact, moving into some of these niche fields, there's major opportunities out there as well.
Yeah.
Um, I just can't advocate for that enough.
I love that. And so if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Best way is probably via email.
Okay.
Yeah, Deanna Martin biogas.com.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's again a very niche field. So if you need a biogas facility, I'm your girl. But there's lots of other conversations in adjacent industries, and you'd be surprised the kind of things that pop up once people
Of
start to
course.
understand what the process is and how it can be beneficial. So
For
the other
sure.
thing I
And
would say, fun, just in general, is as business owners and leaders, and even just, good citizens, advocate for beneficial use of waste streams. There's too much organic going to landfills still.
Hmm.
Ultimately, those are political decisions, and you as the individual have some influence over that. So if you want to see more of these installations in place, advocate for it politically. Let it be a guiding factor in your voting.
Is there anything that we can be doing in our own businesses, especially if someone's got a brick and mortar business? Is there anything that they can be doing to help to contribute to supporting the cause?
Just look into where your waste is going, right?
Okay.
Ask the question and look at the way it's collected and call your counselor and ask, hey, how is waste managed and can we do better? Especially in some of the more rural parts of Ontario,
Hmm.
they're really managed poorly still. Most of our organics end up in landfills. So the more that this is brought to the forefront of the conversation, especially with political leaders, the more you're going to see action.
I'm not going to specifically call out my hometown, but most people know exactly what it is. They still do not have a green waste program, and it blows my mind. So, but I won't call
I'll
them out
say this,
specifically.
it's coming. I know that for a fact.
Well, yeah, I kind of got that impression from some of our pre-interview stuff. So that's really interesting. I'm excited about that for them as well, because you know what? It's about darn time.
Is
Um,
exactly.
well, this has honestly been just incredible. I mean, I've learned a lot. I think that you're really inspiring for not only women in trade, but just women everywhere to really own their worth, to pursue what they're passionate about. And I mean, you're living proof that you can be successful at whatever it is that you are passionate about. Uh, but yeah, it does take a little bit of work. It does take finding the right people, but don't ever stop connecting with people, and don't stop, reaching for higher and more and better. And you're somebody, you're really
Absolutely.
pushing your industry forward, but you're also pushing women in business forward as well with everything that you're doing. So I think it's pretty incredible. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. This has been such a great opportunity. I love talking to you. I love talking about biogas. So thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it. All right. So listen, everyone, if what I'm saying here, if what we're talking about today resonated with you, we would so appreciate it if you would share this episode with someone that you think would benefit from it. And I hope that you will continue to listen in, continue to allow us to be a part of your journey. Don't forget to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast, and subscribe to us as well. Until next time, everyone, keep thriving.
Bye bye.